Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiral Dynamics Integral Live. Today's talk is by Bett Bollhoefer, and she's going to be talking about AI. The talk is titled AI, Friend or Foe. She's a former AI startup CTO, and she's been in the technology world for a while, doing all kinds of things: CTO, product manager, program manager, enterprise architect, software engineer, on and on. She's published very interesting books, such as You Can Be a Software Architect, The Zen of Software Development, Engineer Your Perfect Child. And she also is a yoga teacher now. So I'm going to let her start the talk. This is eventually be a group discussion because I'm sure we all have a lot of questions and our own experiences in relationship to AI. But Bett is gonna kind of introduce this whole topic with all of her knowledge. So Bett, go ahead.
Thanks, Veronica. I love this image that Veronica made using AI. So you're on mute now, Veronica.
I didn't actually make it. I took it from another AI artist whose name I don't have at the moment, but I actually asked him for permission, and his response is sharing is caring. I think that's sort of the mentality in the AI art world, is that, you know, we're working with this AI intelligence and we're all sharing and learning together. So that's a very friendly kind of atmosphere, I would say. So go ahead. Yeah, I love this image too. But
Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so this is the short answer to the question. I believe that AI is just technology. Okay. So you don't have to wait till the end for the punchline. And I think that it's just going through a hype cycle. And I actually have Gartner's hype cycle here, and I'm going to zoom in on this. And how do we win? We have to become more human. So you guys don't have to wait till the very end of my presentation to get that answer. Okay, so let's look at this hype cycle. A lot of the things you'll notice are 5 to 10 years out. So the dark blue is 5 to 10 years out. The lighter blue are things that are here 2 to 5 years. And if you really look at what's here right now, chatbots. Wow, chatbots. So you can think about your Alexa, and I think I haven't really tried Google Voice or Google Assistant, but really we are really far away from good quality AI, more than 10 years out. So there's something called art, artificial. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Hold on one second. Artificial general intelligence is something that I think we think of when we watch movies like The Terminator or these kind of scary movies, The Matrix, artificial general intelligence. And this is Gartner thinks it's more than 10 years out based on their research. And I think that it may be even further, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is the interesting thing about, I love this Gartner curve. So it goes through innovation trigger, like we want this, we start working on it. We go through this peak of inflated expectations, and that's what you see in the media, right? We have all these really high expectations for these things, even though they're 5 to 10 years out or 2 to 4 years. And then we go through this trough of disillusionment, right? So chatbots. Okay, woohoo, great. I can ask my Alexa to start a timer. I can ask her to play my book. Siri, by the way, I'm going to talk about why Alexa is better than Siri. She just is 100% a useless thing. And I was reading on Reddit about how many people just are like, Siri is 100% waste of my time. So we go through this trough of disillusionment, and then finally, maybe we can get to like, oh, this is something that's useful through the slope of enlightenment. And then finally, eventually, it'll get into productivity, which you can notice here, we're still far away from. All right. So I collected some questions from the other admins for my presentation today. So some of the basic questions people asked were, how is AI different than normal programming? And I would say that AI is just a set. It's just a classification of a type of program software which learns and makes predictions. So it's not really different. It's just a set, a classification. All right. Someone asked me about the history. I just went and stole this from Simply Learn because I was like, I'm not going to invent this. So in 1956, the word artificial intelligence was coined by this John McCarthy guy. Shakely was the first general purpose mobile robot that was built. 1987. I think this is where probably a lot of us started really getting interested or getting excited, and maybe artificial intelligence is near. So Deep Blue was designed, which defeated a world chess champion in a game. The first commercial robot cleaner was created in 2002, and then 2005 to 18, speech recognition, dancing robots, smart homes, and many more things started to come. So I have a Roomba, sorry, and it's like it doesn't work very well. In fact, I just noticed that my husband put it in the basement because we're not using that. It's easier just to use a mop and a broom to clean the floor and a regular vacuum cleaner. So I think what's really important to recognize is that things like Deep Blue and the other chess beating games that are really, really good nowadays, they are narrow intelligence. Okay. So narrow intelligence, I'm going to just talk about the difference here. Um, it's built for one thing. Your chess beating game does not then know how to vacuum your floor. Okay, it's trained to do one thing and do it very well. Because it doesn't learn then to go and clean the floor as your Zumba or your Roomba vacuum. It's really important to understand that. So another question that I got was, how does AI relate to automation? And automation is basically when you have a set of well-defined steps and you can execute against that, whether it's a robot that's taking a wheel from a set of wheels, putting it on a car and drilling, I don't even know all the fancy words, but attaching the wheel to the car over and over. It's basically continually doing the exact same thing. Or a kind of automation that's looking for fraud, detecting it, sending an email out about, this is probably fraudulent. So automation doesn't require AI at all. In fact, it's something that's well understood. It doesn't deal with novel issues. And then this thing right in the middle of the screen, artificial general intelligence, is just this mythical thing that says it can learn anything. It can learn how to play chess, and then it can learn how to clean your floor, and then it can learn how to drive your car, and then it can learn how to drive an airplane. It's like, this is not a thing that exists right now. Okay, so how does AI work? So I'm making this super simple, but there's a few concepts I really want you to understand. Okay, so there's two modes with AI that's really important to understand. And I'm going to actually go over here to the right side of the screen. So the real time. So I'm going to talk about me driving my Tesla. So this is me driving my Tesla in real time. I'm the user. I'm interacting. The application is the planning system. The planning system is running on my device, which is my car. So I'm sitting there driving. I click like the address of the place I want to go, let's say the grocery store, and then the planning system starts looking around using the cameras. So it's identifying things that are in the world, and then it queries this compiled neural network that is on my car. It's in my car. It's running on the device. It's not running in the cloud. And it's really important to understand that it has to be very fast. Whenever you have to go to the cloud, you're going to deal with a lot of latency. So you need to have this thing 10 milliseconds. It has to return different predictions. Okay, so every 50 milliseconds, this thing is sending a new batch of video feed to this compiled neural network. And then the compiled neural network goes through its list of very well-defined and very, very efficient code to decide what's probably going to happen in this scenario. So let's say there's a pedestrian crossing the road, there's a car that's coming out, I'm trying to turn left, And the car has to decide what's going to happen. Based on all of its knowledge about pedestrians crossing the road, it's going to decide to do something. And then there's this other car coming, it's going to have to decide. So it has to decide 10 milliseconds to turn back over to the planning application that's running on my car to say, you need to do this. And then the car executes that code. So what's happening in real time that's extremely important to understand about AI is that it's going to save what really happened. Was it successful? Did it work or did it not work? Which is a little bit scary as a driver. But it's going to save that what really happened. Also, it's going to note when I'm dealing with situations. So if I'm driving the car in that same situation, it's going to study what I did. Did I wait for the pedestrian to cross? Did I try to cross in front of them? And so it's going to save that. That's really, really important to understand. And then now let's talk about, so this is the one piece, real time. Now let's talk about something offline. So this is happening in a batch mode. It's happening not in real time. It's happening in the cloud. Okay. So this is what happens. That saved real action interactions with the world, that is being used to label the data. So all of the video data is labeled with the things I did. And then it's going to go into a training processor. And the training processor basically then says, okay, this person in this scenario, they waited until the person passed and the other car, then it turned. So it trains it and then it compiles it into a neural network that then gets downloaded into my car. All right. So this is happening offline. This is happening thousands of times a day over here offline, continually improving the neural network. So these AI companies are only as good as the following. Can they collect real data from the world and how the users really interact? And can they get this whole process really, really smooth and download it down to the application, the device very quickly? And so this is the hard part. So let me talk about the hard part. And this was the thing that I was dealing with in my AI company. So each of these things requires hundreds of brilliant engineers, like engineers who are the expert in the entire world on these different fields. So when people are like, oh, AI is going to take over the world, I mean, it is extremely challenging to do all these steps. So you have to have a repeatable data pipeline. The data pipeline is all of this process that happens. You have to have a repeatable data processing pipeline. You have to manage massive compute systems, massive. You have to gather reliably data, labeled data. So labeled data means that it's like in the old days when we just started with AI, it was like, is this a cat or is it a dog? Does it have a name on it? Like identifying what the image is. So when you think about self-driving car, it's like, this is a bus. This is a garbage can. This is foliage. This is the lane markings. The lane markings was one of the hardest things when I was running my AI company because we were doing road identification. So the lane markings, what is this, a left lane? Is this a straight and a left? Or I should say right. So those kind of lane markings, having reliable labeled data is really challenging. Delivering the data to the user's device, like this is its own huge challenge in real life of like, how do you get the code down? When I was working at GE, we were building all kinds of systems to try to deliver things down to a device. And when you think about like devices that are running in the middle of the ocean, you can think about like, how do we get that satellite data and bandwidth issues? And is the device on? Is it ready to accept security issues around who's allowed to send data to that device? Okay, continually improving every aspect. So this huge chain of getting the data from the device, running it through this data processing system, this has to be continually improved because latency and processing power, you have to have so much of this to be able to scale, to be able to do this more and more. And then compiling the device side code to be small and fast. So this is like high level engineers, the bloatware that we are used to on on websites, and now even on iPhones and Android phones. Like this kind of bloatware that's so slow, it does not work on these real-time systems like self-driving car, which I'm thinking a lot about self-driving car because I just finished watching the Tesla AI Day. So a lot of that is coming into my mind right now. Okay. And then you have to have the best people in the world. The best people in the world, and they're not just doing something they learned in college. They have to be innovating. They have to be like on it. They're building things that have never been built before because this is the first time we're really getting this stuff done. Okay, let's just talk real quickly. If you guys missed any of that, why is Siri horrible and why is Alexa awesome? Because Alexa is always learning. She's constantly learning and she's constantly sending back data to the training system. So if there's just one takeaway, if you have a system that does not reconnect to the cloud and constantly tell, like, oh, I asked if she wanted to mark something with some rating, and she's like, shut the bleep up, right? That's what I do to my Alexa, by the way. Like it has to learn. Like people don't want to be completely bombarded by asking if I want to rate my products. Siri doesn't do this, and this is basically how Apple thinks. Apple is not like a thinking, learning company. They don't like to get a lot of data from their users, and maybe that's something that a lot of people like about the company. But the truth is, they're crippling their Siri product because it just never gets better. And it's been out for 10 years or more, and it's still terrible. So AI only works if it's allowed to learn. I just really want to drill that in to everybody here. So let's talk about the issues. So something that's very much in the media is all this discrimination and bias. And the thing is, AI is learning from flawed humans and from the past. So it's always learning from the past. And what is the past? We have had thousands of years of inequity and it's just this is in our past. So the AI is going to learn from that. So it's really, really challenging to teach the AI how to not, you know, be discriminatory because that's what it's learning from. So things that are really worrisome is like predictive policing, how loan applications are processed, image processing is challenged by darker skin. There's like a lot of very specific challenges around bias. All right. Oh, this one is really worrying to me also, and that is this whole autopilot thing. So I watched this scary documentary on the Dreamliner, the 737 Max that killed two planes and a bunch of people that were flying on these planes. So what happened is the sensor failed, and the sensor told this thing called auto throttle that the plane was falling. And so the auto throttle then took over the plane and started doing various things going up and down. And so the human pilot was fighting with this thing. And so how could these things be fixed? Humans need to stay in the loop. Humans need to understand the way the system works so that whenever something goes wrong, they can take over. If they don't understand what's going on, because there's many problems. I think this is in still litigation, but Boeing did not tell the pilots what was happening. They didn't train them that they had this new auto throttle that was based on this sensor. So the humans didn't know what was going on. And so they're just sitting there fighting with this thing, and then the plane crashes. So humans have to understand, they have to have transparency on what the data the AI is using. So the AI system maybe has a thing that says, I'm detecting that this sensor is telling us that we're falling, so I'm going to take over and do this. Say something if you think it's not the right decision. So humans have to override things. That's really, really critical. All right. You guys can look at these slides more in detail later. Another thing is explainability. So that's similar to what we just talked about. Humans need to know why the thing is doing this. And this is really good for overcoming the bias. So if we see that it's continually declining people who are in a certain zip code, then the humans can come in and go like, oh, we need to retrain this, or we need to make some overrides. So being able to understand what's going on inside the system is really, really important. So there's people who are working on this problem that are bringing new solutions out. Okay, this is the one that we were sort of talking about at the top of the call around copyright. So who gets credit? I loved how Veronica was like, "Oh, he said I could use it." So these systems, these Dolly, Mid-Journey, there's other ones now. They are creating all these images based on like this library of images that are in the internet. And I, I have a lot of paintings and I would love to be able to get my paintings into the system, but I would also like to earn, I don't know, like 5 cents or 0.5 cents or something every time an AI uses my image as a source code to build these predictions of images that people might like. So how can I get credit and earnings for art that goes in? And then let's say I build this tiger that's in this, dilapidated city, right? This was somehow my brain that helped partner with this AI to build this thing, right? How could I get credit and earnings from the art that comes out? So I think this is something that's a pretty new phenomenon that people are wondering about right now. And I'm part of a few different AI art communities on Facebook. So this is all interesting questions. All right. So what's going to happen in the future? So we talked about the current issues. So what are my predictions of how AI is going to impact society? So this one I think is my, number one issue is uh, uh I don't know if you guys can read this title, but basically being automated out of usefulness. So Wall-E is a movie. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it, where all these humans become these big flat blobs that sit in these floating chairs and they basically just go from one entertainment source to the next. And the computer, the AI system just runs everything. So, will technology make human life less worth living, right? Automating people out of jobs. And this is something like a lot of writers have spent time on as science fiction. I think this is very likely. It's very interesting to me. Okay, the next one is the Matrix kind. That AI will turn us into an energy source. We'll become slaves. So for this one, I really don't think this is very likely. I think this is less likely. All right, this is my latest favorite show. I just watched this recently. It's called Moonhaven. I would love to hear after the presentation if anyone else has seen this. So Moonhaven is this story about this colony on the moon where they use an AI to terraform the moon. So these are all photos from the moon. And these people, they all wear this organic cotton with bright colors and they dance. They do these Tai Chi dances every time, one of them feels sad so that they can feel happier. They take a moment to feel their emotions. So they have all this like utopian calm, and they're also happy. They don't have any crime. But also the AI is like constantly watching everything and monitoring and keeping them safe all the time. So it's a really interesting idea that I feel like it's more creative than a lot of the other stories that we've seen. So how can AI help humans reach their potential, right? Like these are tools that we could use. Can we use these tools to clean our environment? Can they help us live in peace? So really, I highly recommend this show. It's very entertaining. All right, another one, I think this one is really eminent. This is a problem that's happening probably already, and it's something that I worry about, and that's police state um, ultimate surveillance system. So being able to crush dissidents. So this is happening in certain countries right now. The AI, the detection systems are finding keywords. They're letting people know, the police know this person is doing crimes, the thought crimes, right? Something we could predict. Maybe we could take a bunch of characteristics about somebody who often commits crime, and then we say, like, this group of people are most likely going to commit a crime. Let's just put them in jail right now, right? So the whole social currency credit system in China is an example of like continually monitoring what people are doing, giving them scores. This is really something I would love for us to discuss and talk about this. Okay, so just really quickly to see where like how do different countries invest in AI. So Singapore's number one, United Kingdom two, Germany, America's four, Finland, Sweden, Canada, France, Denmark. So what's interesting on this list is that China is not on this list. So I don't know if that's because they don't have data on it, but I just thought that was an interesting call out. But Singapore is number one. Artificial intelligence technology is forecast to add 15 trillion to the global economy. So I did this little thought experiment this week about all the technology that's happening because I really do believe that AI is just another technology. And I just don't think it's that special. Okay. So I was just writing down like all the different things that are happening. We have cyber warfare, we have biological tech, data gathering methods, health trackers, compute systems, all the kinds of workplace automations that are happening, military, different kind of trends around product management, stickiness, addictiveness, having understanding the context, social gamification, notifications, augmented reality, location aware, emotional aware. There's just all kinds of things happening in the tech world that are, I think, all of this comes together. It's not really like, oh, AI is the thing that's going to, get us or help us or whatever. It's like there's all of these technologies all happening at the same time. And that's the thing we need to be aware of is like all of this is together and happening. So what is my thought on it? So I don't want to just talk about AI anymore. I want to talk about technology, which I have been a part of for 23 years. And that is at every level, and I'm talking about like spiral level now, at every level of influence also. So each of us in society, if we're a lawmaker or we're a business person or we're just a user or we're an engineer, whatever we are, we have to be intentional about how we use and how we want to make this technology move forward. If we have the ability, which I think especially as users, you can vote with which company you're going to use their products, and we can all be intentional. Like we're co-creating the world right now. So this one is this is like the most generic picture I could find on purpose. So how can humanity survive technology? Again, like I'm moving out from just AI to technology. And I think as a yoga teacher now, focus on the things that bring humans health. So much science, not that we needed it to tell this, connect with other humans. All right, collaborate, serve each other, get grounded and healthy at every level. So holding hands, singing together, there's all kinds of things we can do to make us feel really healthy and strong. And I think that's the thing we need to do is we need to focus on the things that bring us health. And when we do that, then we're having enough space to think carefully and be intentional about how we're using this. And this is the funny one here. We need to partner with our technology and use it intentionally. And this is like, let's hold hands with our technology and be friends. Okay, so discussion questions. Is AI special or is it just the latest buzzy technology? How can humanity survive? How can humanity leverage technology to save ourselves? And that concludes my presentation. And I'll put those questions in the chat so do we want to go into breakout rooms? Or do you want to stay here? What are you guys thinking?
Let's see, we have 13 people, so we could go into breakout rooms, or we could stay all together. I'm also trying to throw together some AI images to show everybody. I wish I would have done this beforehand, just because I know many of us have been playing around with AI art, but not everybody has. So for those that haven't, that might be surprised about some of the advances that we've made.
So then let's just stay together, and that way everyone can hear, and also the recording can have the discussion on it.
Okay. So
Yeah,
maybe we can
if we go to the breakout rooms, we can't continue to record, so.
So I see Sphere. So we're gonna go to hands. So Sphere has his hand up first. So I would love to hear from everyone. So everyone will get in the queue. So Sphere.
Yes, okay. First of all, thank you for I learned new things, so thank you. I just want to ask why have you decided to leave off your presentation all the risks, all the fears that we have, even if those fears are stupid, like you know, like we all know Isaac Asimov, who wrote about it like 70 years ago, about the risk of, sorry, my dog is again barking, about that intelligence robots can break the rules and try to be violent against humanity, or other modern risks that we have. Why do you decide not to talk about it at all?
I did have that. I talked about that. So I went through like the Matrix version, the Wall-E version, right? So I did address it. I like I said, I think the most realistic risk is the automation out of jobs, because I think just from deeply understanding Tesla's technology, which I've just got a refresher on yesterday, I think artificial general intelligence, which is the thing that would take over humanity, right? I just think that is really, really unlikely. The amount of compute power, the amount of humans that have to get the pipelines working, the amount of training data, like it's just so unlikely. That's why I said like this is extremely hard. Your robot, vacuum is not going to take over the world. So so I did address it, Sphere, and I'm sorry that it didn't sound like I addressed it enough, but does that satisfy your question, or you still feel like I didn't address it enough?
No, it's completely okay, and you know, you are in your presentation, you are really saying, you know, it's not like your presentation can achieve all our interest. So it's what it is. So it's the vibes that I hear about AI in the last year or two is a lot about fears from it. It's very strong.
Yeah.
So, but maybe you are relaxing us. So maybe we should listen to you as well.
I think we need to worry. I think we need to worry about automating our jobs out of existence. I think we need to be intentional about what humans should be doing. So yeah, I totally agree that's a fear, but is it going to take over us and make us slaves? I don't think so. Because the amount of training data that it needs to do that well, it's not there. Okay, Sphere, thank you. Let's go to Paul.
You know, let me lower my hand here first. I guess I totally agree with you on that, Bett. I did a thought experiment around this a number of years ago when I was still working. You know, we tend to think that, well, AI can replace mechanical things, but they can't replace things where people have to think. Again, professionally, I was in the accounting field. You know, every organization in the world has to have somebody working in accounting. So there's like probably hundreds of millions of people working in accounting. And I thought, okay, what would it take to eliminate all those jobs? Well, the accounting field, in a sense, has gone halfway there, because we have, you know, with double entry bookkeeping, this overall system of universality already exists. You know, that was invented hundreds of years ago. If all we'd have to do is come up with a worldwide, universally accepted way to classify expenses. In other words, if you buy a box of pencils, do you call it an office supply? Do you call it an art supply? Whatever. If you could come up with a universally accepted way of classifying those expenses and make it dynamic, you could build an AI that would do that. And you could literally replace, other than core data entry people, you could replace every accounting person on the planet with that. And so, yeah, I agree that the big risk is going to be finding not necessarily general knowledge issues, but very, very specific issues, and convert those into algorithms and replace jobs all over the place.
Paul, thank you for, I think that was a great example of why these things are hard. I'm just going to give one example from Verizon. So I was at Verizon for 10 years, and we were just trying to put automation around telephone, process, like assigning a telephone number to a human, to a line. That was a total disaster, because if you look inside of any kind of telephone box, it is a nest of wires. The labels are not on the right wire. You have to go in there. A tech has to go in there and touch the wire on one end, and someone's on the other end, and they're like, this is the one that's connected here. And then they would put a little label. And I was always like, why can't we just go through and clean up every box in the world? No one's going to pay money for that. So labeling things is one of the hardest things. And when I was the CTO of my startup, I hired people to go with drones. They normally did wedding photography. I hired them off Craigslist to go take photos of intersections with what are the labels on the lanes. This is like so hard, like getting standard data from the world. It is extraordinarily hard. And it might be just like, oh, we just have to label everything correctly. And then it's all, yeah, that's the hard part. Okay. So don't just try to minimize it. It's not easy. All right, let's go to Barbara.
It helps if you take your mute off. Now, when we have an AI that unmutes when I want it to, I really agree with your point that AI is not the issue. Unless we come to the point where AI begins to program itself. And as Asimov talked about, right? But until we really have that happening on a broad scale, it's not general artificial intelligence. It's all the bots. It's all of the partials that are out there doing things much better on a very small scale than the humans who used to do it. So it turns out there's software now that goes and maps corporate computer systems and finds what's on it. I mean, literally. So a guy doesn't have to go out to it. They actually find what's at the end of each wire. Now, I don't see doing that. I just spent half an hour yesterday. I just put in a solar power, and we had to go through to see which of my circuits actually, even though there was a label on them, which of my circuits actually ran things like my refrigerator and my furnace. So you're right. It's a hard thing. I guess when I go to the negative side, Sophia, I go to certainly the surveillance problem, but I go to the mind control. What it turns out that the whole field of neural marketing has become very sophisticated, and so it's a very small, narrow thing. And to my surprise, it's easier to do than to map roads. Much easier to do, and even if you think that human brains aren't all the same, there are broad trends that cognitive failures that almost all humans have. And so what's happening with the bots and with the surveillance and all of that is they're hacking the human brain. And so, you know, the argument about science during COVID, well, you know, it's not about science, it's about which scientists do you trust, because suddenly anybody can appear, even a bot, as a scientist telling folks something. And if that bot appears to come from your tribe, then you believe it, not because it's science, but because your tribe believes it. And so I think that that it's that trend on the fatal flaw mode that we really need to worry about.
It's true. There's so many things happening in tech that I just didn't even get to cover all of that. So yeah, great point. Okay, I think Josh is next, and then Steve.
All right, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I thought that was good comprehensive overview. Definitely a lot of stuff I didn't know. I agree with your premise that it's not AI per se, it's the technology, but I don't think that's just like, oh, phew. like I think that's the issue, right? We have this increasingly space age technology, as they say, and we have the same caveman brains, and that is a problem. Now, I'm somebody who has been elements of Luddite, but I accept certain things. So I'm certainly not the first to jump on a technology, but when I realize, oh, I can't run my business without this thing, I use it and I try to make the best use of it without it controlling me. But I think the idea of the dystopian future, yeah, a lot of that stuff is silly stuff, right? But I think some of it it's not intentionally, but it distracts us from the fact that we're already in that dystopia. Like, I mean, look at people's anxiety levels and depression, and you know, particularly younger people, their attention span. People are like almost literally illiterate. Think about how many times you check Facebook during the day, how many, you know, you hear the ding on your phone and you run to it like Pavlov's dog, right? So we're already in the midst of that. We have, you know, online dating, which at first was really awesome. Now it's really just like selecting for like a tiny percentage of men, and then most women are kind of just being discarded. That the dating lives of people is being destroyed. Most people, and think about what are the children of the dating algorithms, you know, going to be, you know, in 25 years and stuff like that. What is that next generation of people left out of it? And then like the ones selected for, like, what is that all going to look like? But in the end, yeah, I don't think just railing against the system per se is going to work. I mean, I kind of do want to opt out at some point, but I don't know if that will be likely or possible. I think the idea would be, okay, well, we need to catch our consciousness up to these technologies. Well, at the same time, I think we need to have limits, and I think we have at least admissions of where things can go wrong, but I don't think we have any mechanisms in place to do anything with that. So focusing on how do we work on human consciousness stuff. But what's funny is, like, even in the spiral dynamics world, which is all about that, it's like taboo to suggest that somebody who's like an egocentric rapist should like have some rules in their lives and not do that anymore, right? It's like, no, accept people where they are. And it's like, yeah, of course, accept people where they are, try to guide them towards healthier things. But the idea that we shouldn't be nudging people towards a less dysfunctional world in which, you know, where we can exist in harmony with these technologies, I think we do need to do that. And so we'll see what happens. But yeah, the last fear on my mind is like robot uprising.
Your robot vacuum wants to do the dishes now. Okay, thanks, Josh.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Steve, and then because Bill hasn't said anything yet, we're gonna go to Bill and then to Sphere. Okay, just to give equal opportunity. So Steve, you're in tech too, so I would love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah. And thanks for your presentation. But I kind of basically share your view of it, and I've been quite cynical about AGI ever since people started talking about it, and that partly comes from a kind of 40-year love affair with technology and having tracked the whole progress of AI, and then realizing pretty quickly that the sort of Asimov level dreams are pie in the sky, and and to sort of come to Safria's question, I'm sort of quite interested about why so many people expend so much energy on trying to kind of almost write kind of sci-fi and pass it off as journalism, because when those things are so far away. Because if anyone who's ever had anything to do with trying to implement any kind of automation or AI system will tell you it's incredibly difficult. And we're and we've had automatic coffee makers for 50 years. How good is the quality of the coffee that comes out of your automatic coffee maker? It's kind of just thinking about it. So I then wonder, well, what's the function then of all that fear mongering? I mean, it's probably kind of sexy, and it probably comes back at a philosophical level to the whole sort of Descartes mind versus matter, and people trying to think, well, what if the matter, the dead matter, actually has a way of organizing itself to compete with what we perceive to be spirit infused or mind infused? Do you know what I mean? There's some kind of thread there, cultural thread, that comes from our kind of philosophical confusions about the nature of matter and mind and all that kind of stuff, which is, it's interesting. I also wonder whether there's a thread of Ludditism in it as well, in terms of it's a way of promoting the let's smash big tech agenda, which I'm not entirely against, I have to say, because I kind of think there's definitely huge dangers in big tech. And also, along with Barbara, I kind of fear the whole neurohacking thing, because it turns out that we're in certain specific areas far more predictable than we like to think we are, and that the algorithms can pick that up pretty easily and then exploit it. And I kind of see, in some sense, I can see a version of the Matrix coming to play in the whole virtual reality metaverse kind of thing, which I just see as a sort of a hell of kind of computer graphic doom scrolling, basically, that as it's become this attention economy, that you're trapped inside the system they want to keep you trapped inside of, because by some metric that's revenue generating or whatever. And then that leads me to my final point, which is maybe the most interesting things of this are actually political and existential. So what is it to be a human? AI tells us what it is to be a human and not to be a robot, because so much of historically work has basically been humans doing robot jobs, and rather than human jobs. So that's kind of interesting. And politically, what the hell are we doing collectively as a society? What do we want society to be? What do we want life experience to be? Anyway, that's my tuppence worth. Thanks, Bett.
That was awesome. Okay, I really want to hear from new people. So I'm going to go to Bill, and then I'm going to go to Veronica. So that way we can hear from new people, and then we'll come back to Sphere. I'm sorry, Sphere. You're probably angry about this. You wish I could be replaced by an AI right now. Okay, Bill.
Thanks, Beth. That was wonderful. I really enjoy hearing you talk about these things. It's very interesting. I think it is a little bit of a discussion about what it means to be human. And I know how AI sort of categorizes data, right? And I thought about some of our first attempts to categorize data, and maybe that would be in our language with like a dictionary, and the dictionary tries to define something. And just as you said, it's difficult to define what lane you're in, or is it, so it's sort of like, well, we have these words, right, where they have exact meanings. Well, they don't have exact meanings. And that's the trouble. Nothing is as precise as you want to think it is. We can we can create code in base 2, and we can, create word programs and things, but it still doesn't tell you what the meaning of those words is. And I just thought that was fascinating, how we always continue to try to categorize things, but we can't really categorize meaning and purpose.
Very well said, Bill. Yeah, that's really, I totally agree. We can't even agree on basic definitions of things. So yeah, our computers are not gonna be able to figure it out. Thank you so much, Bill. All right, Veronica, I hope you're going to share with us some pictures.
Yeah, I'm going to try to share my screen. And I will share some AI images for your viewing pleasure. Okay. So let's see if I can make this full screen. Okay. Can you all see these images full screen? Yes? Okay. So I don't know how many of you, oh, it's automatically playing. I don't know how many of you have tried creating AI art. I know a lot of us starting this summer have really jumped into it, and it's been a lot of fun. There's some AI generators that are web-based that are a lot easier to produce images with, but they're not quite as, don't give you quite as interesting images as if you go and try to learn how to use Stable Diffusion or Midjourney. But the images that can be made are really quite exquisite, in my opinion. For example, these were images made by a woman who lucid dreams quite actively, and she was trying to capture with the help of AI. She was able to reproduce what it feels like, and she chose a style to represent that. This, and then some people play around with materials or with feelings or with action. So here someone was playing around with explosions. In this case, explosions and bubbles and water, explosions and dirt. And this person was playing around with the material gold, and gold mixed with the human, what the exact prompts are. But what's fun about this is, for me, it feels like you're dreaming while awake, because you are putting out ideas, and then it's like you're getting an echo back from AI, but you never know exactly what it's going to give you. And so the whole process is very rewarding and fun. And sometimes you get very strange results where there are too many hands or too many fingers. Here's somebody playing around with the material jade, and it's amazing how well it can reproduce this material with different configurations. And here it's sort of backlighting, which is really interesting. And playing around with milk. So what happens when you're throwing milk, but it's also reflecting a human face. And the idea of a Medusa, but here I think the AI is just coming up with the material. And I love this series here. I think it's called Kenutsi. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. It's the Japanese art of fixing things with gold. But here it's fixing Humpty Dumpty that broke. You know, it's just like fusing two ideas together and seeing what would Humpty Dumpty look like if he was fixed with gold. And then for photographers, this is fun because they know how to play around with the settings of the lenses and, you know, the apertures and all these kind of things. So here you can play with it so that it looks like you're looking at something miniature. And then playing with lighting or time of day. These are landscapes, and obviously the person wanted to get sort of striking shadows and achieved some nice results. And here's somebody playing around with the color neon or these black lights. And reproducing old photographs. So AI is, I mean, what's amazing is it's actually taking pictures from the internet, but then it's creating something new with those ideas. And some of the photographs, especially DALL-E, it can make photographs that are so good that you would never be able to tell that it was AI, or it would be very difficult. And in fact, for those of us that have been looking at a lot of AI art and photographs, we find this phenomenon happening now that when you look at any image, you have a second where you question if you're actually looking at AI photograph or not. And here you can clearly see the idea of upscaling, where on one side you have a pixelated a polygon 3D model, and then you tell AI to upscale it, and it creates, you know, something that looks like a photograph. And I meant to have the original polygon version of that. Sometimes things go very, very wrong. Prompted just the girl in a bikini on a beach, and you get all these extra body parts. And sometimes people are intentionally funny. Somebody did zombie Olympics to see what would come out. And of course you get some hilarious images of zombies doing different sports. And this is an artist and programmer who created a group, and she created the first, the first comic book created all with AI art, got a copyright. So this was copyrighted, but obviously she worked very hard on it to get something that followed a sequence of images that made sense. And she's also been training AI to render pictures of herself and of other people. Because right now the AI renders images of either famous people that have lots of photographs online, or just generic people. But if you want to render an image of yourself, it's very hard. But you can train a computer. So the latest thing amongst AI people right now is training a computer. So she managed to train the AI to make paintings of her. So this is a painting that she made of herself. And I know she's made other images that are quite interesting too, but I couldn't find them in time. And they really do look like her. And it's exciting because some of us may want to publish pictures of ourselves, but we don't always get the best results. So with AI, we could kind of clean that up, or even make ourselves look a little younger if we want, or make us look a little more exciting, or whatever, Superman, Superwoman version of ourselves. So I think that this is the sort of the more fun, creative side of AI that's really waking up people's interests right now, what this could do to the creative side of us. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Veronica. I loved it. Okay, finally, we get to Sphere.
You did all you can to reject me, but here I am. First of all, about the AI photos, I can tell you that we are already using it professionally in films. When we want to do a reference, to find some reference for our art or our animations, and we have no clue where to go, instead of searching hours at different places, we just write it and we get different kinds of images. There was even one commercial where the art, like the I don't know how to say it in English, all the rooms and the windows and what we build in real construction, got ideas from those photos. So we are already using it, and it's great. It's really helpful. It saves time.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, how difficult would it be to make a spiral dynamic AI system? One that will help you get better decision making and can analyze different things in life in order to get to take a better decision making. Is it something that is difficult comparing to other things to do in AI from a professional side?
So I actually came up with an idea during the week as I was thinking about this presentation, and it's a Google or a scheduling system, that I basically give it a goal. So let's say I wanted to have a goal of being more connected to other humans. So I told this goal to my scheduling system, and then I came up with a bunch of things. Like it searches all the meetups to find things that I like say it knows I like improv and dancing and yoga. And so it starts curating a schedule for me based on my goal. And then, and also having human relationships. So it knows that I have, people I want to talk to, go for coffee with, and it starts messaging them like, hey, let's go for coffee. And it sets up some really great individual meetings. And so like that kind of system is extraordinarily complicated. Okay, like in some ways it's super easy, like looking for meetups. But the thing is, like it has to know that my husband and I only have one car that we need to share. So I have to, if I have to drive somewhere, it has to be at a time where my husband's not going to a gig. And then it has to understand that, I don't like this kind of dancing. Like that's not my thing. I hate that kind of dancing, but I like this other kind of dancing. And like the nuances in the language has to be there. So that this is an example of a decision-making system for myself. Maybe I also give it a goal of like, number one, I want to connect with more humans. Number two, I want to spend more time learning. So it would look for courses or books or YouTube videos and give me like time slots on my calendar of like, now you're going to sit and watch this YouTube. Now you're going to read this book for 30 minutes. So even just that kind of simple thing is extremely complicated. And that's just one example of like, how could something help me make better decisions with my time? So anything more general, it's just going to be so hard to do. And
Okay.
that itself is hard. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, maybe we should keep a meeting speaking about spiral dynamic because we don't have the AI tool.
Yeah. We'd have a meeting about how to design that. Okay, next is Barbara, and then is Paul.
Sorry, my AI still won't unmute me when I want it to. What the heck? One of the interesting things that I noticed from Veronica is that an awful lot of our tech is about games and toys, right? It's not about something that will feed us. It's not about something that will shelter us. It's not about something that will actually make my physical life easier, right? It's about distraction. It's about entertainment. And I wonder, so we've got this connected then to job loss, right? And so we have to have that, because if people have no productive thing to do in the physical world, they've got to be entertained somehow. But I'm wondering what happens. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that keeping the tech going and improving it requires a bunch of really smart people who will not be unemployed. So what happens when 2/3 of the world just sit back and entertains themselves, and the other third is working 80-hour weeks to keep their tech running? I wonder how long that can go. I think it's much more of a problem than unemployment. I mean, at some point, the folks that keep the tech running just quit maybe. But another risk is how much can you do physically without your tech, right? So do you have a landline? Could you even make a telephone call if you didn't have your tech? A lot of us can't. And so, and people don't know how to do things, physical things anymore. And even if you do know, like, you know, when I was younger, I used to be able to do some maintenance on my car engine. Shoot, now I have to have a high-end computer to do that maintenance. And I have to have a lift because the pieces are underneath. So all of those kinds of things, we, as individuals, we can't keep our own world working. So what happens if we have the grid go down, right? It's not just that we can't heat and cool our buildings, it's that we can't run all sorts of technology that keeps people functional. And I'm wondering if that isn't more of those two things, you know, two classes of people, those that have to work to provide entertainment for the left, and then the tech inability to keep running on its own. You know, at what point one of those fail, and we end up not being able to keep a high-tech society running.
I think that's very, very fascinating realization, and just studying the Tesla stack, the level, the number of engineers that have to keep that whole thing running is incredible. So that's a really interesting thing. And I know they work like 90 hours a week over there. I've had friends that worked at Tesla. So I'm wondering though, if there's some kind of like a spiral for tech companies, right? They start off as games, and then they move into like maybe business tools, and then they move into, I don't know. So there's like levels that they climb up. I'm hoping, because games is a really easy thing. I mean, even the first computer software, a lot of it was like Pong, right? So games is a really fun thing to start with, and then the technology turns into other things. Like, for instance, Tesla actually is building simulators that are, I think it was running on gaming engines, right? So the technology that comes out of gaming then can turn into more useful things for humanity. And so that's another aspect of that. But like, just my own philosophical point of view is I think everyone should work 35 hours a week, and they should you know, spend time doing yoga more. That's my personal point of view. Okay. So yeah, Barbara, you're right. It's a mess right now. So many people are burned out because they work too much, and then the other
doing
half,
what?
which
What
part?
what would they actually do working 35 hours a week?
And I mean, that's the question that who was it? Bill was asking. What does it mean to be human? What should we be doing? I don't know the answer. So I have a lot of opinions, but they change quickly. My opinions change quickly, as my husband tells me. Let's go to Paul.
Let me take down my hand here. This has really been some great discussion here. I got notes all over the place of how to. I guess I want to start out by again thanking you, Beth. This was really great. And the thing that really helped me was you really did a great job of explaining just exactly how hard it is to develop general artificial intelligence. That it's like, you know, I never really quite grasped the difficulty of it, and you did a great job of that. And I'll limit my comments to what Barb had brought up, the idea about the limitations on how to keep the technology going. There's a guy that I watch on YouTube. He's a I think he's a demographer, because a lot of the stuff he talks about is about demographics and economics, and he's a business consultant. His name is Peter Zan. And he makes a very compelling argument. He's always doing these, here's the demographic makeup of China, and here's the demographic makeup of these various countries. And, he talks a lot about how, the fact that because the difference between the number of older people in society and younger people is narrowing. There are going to be impacts of that. And one of them, he makes a very compelling argument that all of the technological development that we've seen over the last, say, 20, 30 years, there are demographic and economic underpinnings of that. And he argues that we're going to see a slowdown in just technological development because it requires so much investment capital to keep that technology development engine going. And we're just not going to see that amount of wealth available for investment and things like that in the future. So it just kind of doubles down on what Barbara was arguing. How do you keep it going? Well, how do you keep it going when, what do you do when you can't, you don't have enough high-end engineers to do the work. And second of all, you don't have the money to pay even half of the ones that you need because the investment capital is drying up.
Yeah, I mean, this comes back to Piketty, right? His slope of investment in humans. If we slow down the rate of humans making new humans, and then we can't do infinite growth. Infinite growth is called cancer. So we have to
Right.
find other ways to develop that are just not in constant monetary things. There's so many different thoughts I had on this whole thing today, and I had to really like narrow it down. But yeah, the growth model that we use to measure success of businesses, right, is return on investment, money wise. Maybe there needs to be a change there. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, Paul, that you just mentioned, but yeah, that's all critical. We have to just change. Every level has to change. And it will have to. So, and I think the other thing, the slow down, there's been some interesting things that I've been thinking lately about collaboration, and from last week too. Like we have to collaborate, and collaboration takes time. So we have to slow down so that we can learn from each other and take time to partner. And all that means less fast, more collaboration. So, all right, Paul, thanks. I think Steve's next, and then Josh.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to echo on the threads of Barbara and Paul to some extent there in terms of the problem with the big tech and our increased reliance on these very systems and the kind of the inroads into our daily lives is it's building in huge fragility, basically, and as you know, these systems don't kind of just keep going on the whole. They do need a lot of maintenance and a lot of kind of attention. And if we are looking at a kind of limited or shrinking skill pool for doing that, we've got a kind of time bomb on our hands. Plus we're going into a future where more chaos is expected just because of the disruption from climate change and then its political ramifications and so forth. So we're going into a world where we're expecting more disruption and real kind of chaotic events, but sitting on a stack of very precarious technology that we've somehow delegated most of the functioning of our lives to, and at the same time disempowered ourselves from the lower V-mean type skills. So, I think which is what also Barbara was kind of saying there, but, I mean, that's why I kind of find the whole Wilbur transcend and include thing kind of false, because, who up at Yellow knows how to kind of do all the basic survival beige, amongst the kind of people who claim to be Yellow, who's fully included all of those beige level skills, it's kind of, so And maybe that's something we need in our back pocket to kind of reacquaint ourselves with some of the real basic skills, just because we don't know where this
Saeed
whole.
and I do, but that we're probably the only two on the planet, Saeed and I.
Yeah, well, exactly. There you go. So it's a kind of that might be something, everyone hankering after tier 2 type evolution. We might also, as a backup policy, want to get some good beige, purple, and even a touch of red kind of skills kind of established as well. There we go.
All right, thanks, Steve. So the takeaway there is everyone needs to learn how to do the basics of like build a table or grow some vegetables. I can barely even grow anything. All right, Josh.
Yeah, so the technology, kind of having some issues, the technology here. Well, so it's not, again, it's not the technology, it's the systems around it. So before I was talking about how human brains haven't caught up to it, I think even our economic structures haven't caught up to stuff. And it's like, until that stuff's dealt with, I don't want to support the technology. I realize I don't live in a world where I can do without it per se, although I'd like to. I'm not like fighting it, but I can't support it. Just like, I'm not opposed to wind power or solar power. I am opposed to just doing more of that on top of more fossil fuels without addressing the energy consumption issue, which is, a very much deeper issue. So same with the technology piece. So for instance, all right, I was late into the smartphone game. I didn't get one until maybe 10 years ago. And basically, at that point, I've had to get 2 more since then because of various bugs. Like I think they deliberately slow them down, or there is just something that's, the planned obsolescence, which I think is a problem. Like, do we really need a brand new computer phone every 6 months? No, absolutely not. So it kind of forces you, if you want to even interact, like, well, now you have to be on the next level of it and the next level of it. And the most recent example is, so in 2020, I got what was like the state of the art. I mean, it was like the lower end, but still the lower end Samsung is still pretty, it's a magic computer, right? And I was like, this has 1,000 million things I don't even need, but this is what it is, like, whatever. So I had that. And then just recently, I needed to start doing some videos for work. And I realized my mouth syncing was off. It was not. And so I spent like 2 weeks on the phone with Samsung and Verizon, where they lied to me about, well, let's do all this. And I did all the tech stuff. And then I looked up stuff online. And the truth is, their video camera is a piece of shit. It doesn't do the basic thing that my flip phone did 15 years ago, which is have my mouth talk at the same time as my words. And meanwhile, this magic computer has all of these insane gadgets that I'm spending all this time disabling and uninstalling. And it doesn't even have that basic technology. And then on top of it, they lied to my face about all of it. Apparently all that stuff had been like taken down from the tech forum. And I finally corroborated it when I contacted a Samsung repair place. And I was like, yeah, so can you verify? He's like, yeah, the camera sucks. It's like the video camera sucks on it. But they wouldn't acknowledge all that. So I had to trade it in, and they give me a little bit of money. I had to buy this $800 new phone just to have my mouth match the words on my video camera. That's it. So it's not like a Jackie Chan movie. And I finally got the new phone, and there's an issue. It doesn't text right. Like, it doesn't get photographs in the text. And I looked up online, and apparently the new Samsung had some patch issues where you don't get text. Just like, and that Samsung has been deleting all of the people's complaints online about it. So it's like, and this new phone that I have, like, yeah, I spend an hour just disabling all the idiot stuff that I don't want on it. So they spend all of this time with all of this like crazy state of the art technology, all these things I would never need, don't even want. And it doesn't even text. So it's like, the problem isn't the technology. It's amazing that we have this technology. We can fix the things that we can fix the text thing, but because it's run by these companies and based probably just on how our economy is operating, they have to, if they have a piece of shit camera, it's still on the market, they're still selling it, they can't acknowledge it. So that just complete lack of human ethics makes it so I don't want to be a part of that system, but I have no choice really, other than just completely opting out, which at a certain point I probably will try to do. So that's just my rant on, yeah, it's not the technology, it's the systems behind the technology. And until we're addressing that, yeah, I'm not going to cheerlead the technology. I think it's just, I just had to spend $1,000 or whatever amount of money on a thing just to get the technology that existed, well, like 50 years ago in a basic video camera. So that's just,
Josh, I hear that you're very frustrated right now.
well, but that's the thing, but it's not just me, my personal frustration. This is like the system is set up in such a way that not only does this keep happening, but the entities in charge of it will hide the fact that it's happening and keep making billions and billions of dollars while keeping that same faulty product on until an idiot like me buys it again, and then it's too late. So can something be done about that? And can the tech cheerleaders address those underlying issues that you're like, oh, it's not the technology? Agreed. It's not.
Okay. I'm going to tell you some insider information. When I was at Instagram, I was in charge of benchmarking Apple versus Android. And Android, the best Android phone is way worse than any Apple phone. Okay? So I don't think they tell you that, but it's just, Android is just not good at all. Okay? That's now officially on video. Yeah, so it's just really important. I know I complained a little bit about Apple earlier, but they are just incredibly good at building hardware, and their hardware is so much better than any Android.
That's great, but I don't need the best of the best. I just need the technology that we created 55 years ago to be able to work on my
I think it's not 55 years ago, but
video
anyways,
camera, right?
and by the way, I know you and I are the same age, so this is the thing. It's like we need to vote with our dollars. And if the technology that's coming out is not and you just said a word that we haven't even mentioned this whole call. And I was just talking with my yoga teacher yesterday about it, ethics. You just mentioned ethics. And I really wanted to spend some time on that part. It's like we need to vote with our dollars for things that we think are important, and having the basics working is critical. I remember when I was at Verizon, we were starting to work on VoIP, and VoIP, I refused to use it even though I was an architect on it because the quality was just terrible. And now look at Zoom Zoom, honestly, we all have to admit, has really come a long way. So VoIP has really gotten better, but I think we need to demand. Basically, we need to demand. Get little picket signs and say, we demand the basics to work. So Josh, you've been heard at least by one person, and I'm a yoga teacher now. All right. I'm going to go to Bruce because Bruce hasn't said anything yet, and I would like to hear from as many people. My green self is going to try to bring in voices that I haven't heard yet. So I'm just going to go to Bruce right now. Thanks, Josh. Bruce?
Thanks, Bett, for your desire to include me. I guess a couple things pop up. I agree with a lot of what's been said so far. A couple things pop up. One is this idea that as we add technology, we're going to put people out of work. That may happen, but this increased technology has been happening for a long time. I mean, when automobiles were developed, there was a concern about leather makers and horse-drawn buggies, and would they all lose their jobs? And people shift. Now, it may get harder and harder to shift skills to do new things, but also I like the idea of us as a society shifting to more decentralized, being more decentralized, more local, so that it's possible then to do things like grow your own food, things like that, and be more, not have a system that's so fragile, because I think that is an issue. I think, Steve, maybe you brought up that idea of fragility. Our system is very, is very fragile. I think, though, with technology, and I think, Josh, you mentioned this, like, we haven't adapted to the technology. And a lot of this has to do with being, like the whole dopamine cycle where, checking, did I get a like, and all of that. And we're just not designed for that. And this touches on ethics as well. Like, this is potentially very destructive for us as individuals in terms of changing our, especially developmentally for children, changing how we, can people meditate, things like that. If you're going to do an exercise like that, like, where's my phone? I need to check my phone. So I think that is maybe one of the biggest issues with technology, and it's somewhat hidden. Like, people don't even know that that's happening to them. Yeah, those are my thoughts at this time.
Yes. Yes. Believe me, there's Josh liked what you said, and then I don't know what happened. Right? I mean, this is why I quit tech and became a yoga teacher, is because I really think humanity needs to slow down, evolve. And it's so funny because I see it in my students, especially youngish, like 30 to 50-year-olds, which to me now are very young people because I work with a lot of seniors, and they just can't relax. They can't even hold a pose for like 30 seconds because they're like too bored. And they, like, I see them, they complain. They're like, this was too slow. Like, you should have let us go faster. And I'm like, you're missing it. You're missing it. We're trying to slow down. We're trying to get into our senses. People can't hear things. They don't see things. I make them get into their senses. And I believe this is the work that I need to be doing right now. Like, this is where we are right now. And I know, Bruce, you do a lot with nonviolent communication, right? Like, do you know how you feel? People don't know how they feel. They can't tell anyone how they feel. It's like, I feel like you're being a bad person. It's like, no, that's not how you feel. Like, how do you actually feel? Right? So getting people to slow down, get in their senses, I feel like I'm doing God's work right now. So yeah,
The
good
kingdom of
stuff.
heaven, Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now, I don't know if he really said that. I don't know what that means. I mean, there are lots of interpretations, but a lovely interpretation of that is that within my body, if I pay attention to it, that is a way of achieving spiritual growth, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I know. Oh, you know what? Veronica, the singularity, I actually had slides on that, and I just finished listening to Ray Kurzweil's interview with Lex Friedman. The singularity, let me just address this really quickly before we go to Bill and Barbara and Paul, is that it's connecting our bodies with technology, and I believe we've already done that. Like, when I don't have my technology, I miss it. Like, I don't, like, how much can I function without it? It's not very well. Okay?
But that's not what the definition of singularity.
I know.
The definition of singularity is a hypothetical point in time at which technology growth will become radically faster and uncontrollable, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization.
I believe we're already there. I really do. And I just listened to his whole interview, which you should totally listen to. It's like an hour and a half or longer. So I mean, there's things like happening with Neuralink. I was just watching videos about Neuralink, and there's some other competitor that has just been FDA approved, right? So a higher bandwidth connection between our brain and technology would be one of the next steps. We have all these health trackers, like connecting our bodies with the technology, that would be like the next step for the singularity. And then having these really good AI systems that we can query with our brain that says like, which conference should I go to next year? And it crunches a ton of contextual data and then tells us like this is the one that's the best one. Those kind of things, I really see it as like happening pretty soon, Veronica. And I don't think it's like some huge like moment in time. I think it's just going to happen slowly and we're just not even going to notice.
Yeah, it's happening. There was some article in the New York Times or Washington Post, and maybe you're making reference to, because I don't even remember who wrote it, but it was somebody that made a very clear case for why we should be scared for the future. I didn't read it because I'm already shitting in my pants about climate change. So I don't need to be worried about AI. I'm having fun with the AI art and I'm trying to keep that cool and chill. So I didn't read the article, but
Yeah.
somebody that laid out a very strong case for why we should be worried, and the whole singularity thing. So anyway, I tend to not want to take it too seriously either.
I really think this is all just buzz worthy clickbait. I think the singularity, I really believe the singularity has already happened. Like we're completely connected to our technology. We cannot live without it. Um, but anyways, let's go to Bill and then Barbara and then Paul. And I do indeed have a hard stop directly at the top of the hour. I'm teaching yoga.
Very good.
All right.
Thanks
Bill.
again, Beth. I really liked your slide about the different levels of tech and all the things that fit into it. I mean, you had 50 or 60 things that were there. And one of the thoughts that occurred to me, a lot of times with this singularity or whatever, we think of a dystopia, right? Of what's going on. And 50 years ago or so, we had some books written about dystopias. The one was 1984, and the other one was Brave New World. And in the 1984 dystopia, the idea was that Big Brother was always watching you. And you talked about that a little bit there. And with the news channel, though, there was always just one news channel. Everybody got the same news. And so we didn't really know if we could trust that truth source. But in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, it was just the opposite. There was so much information and people were bombarded with so much information that they didn't know what was true. It was just chaotic. They had no idea who to trust. At least with 1984, you knew that you had to take whatever was given by the government and Big Brother a grain of salt. But in our current social media thing, or as they say, I think on the Daily Evolver, the law of infinite cornucopia, where you can find something, whatever your crazy belief is, you can find something on the internet that supports your point of view. And it seems like we've moved more toward the Brave New World dystopia. And I just wondered what you thought about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's way more Brave New World than 1984. I've read all those books, Anthem. I mean, there's a bunch of books in that category. So it's very scary. I mean, I would say those things shaped my mind as a young adult, along with Asimov, which I've read so all those ones too. So, I mean, all of it is going to be combined and remixed, like the soma, right? Like you can look at all the ways that we are killing our ability to feel. The other one is Fahrenheit 451, right? It's like, can we turn off our emotions? I think if I listen to a lot of these tech leaders, I would say they've turned off their emotions. And that's like very dangerous, because if you can't feel what your feelings are, then you can't realize like, oh, I'm making something that's not a good thing. And you just think about all this addictive technology that Barbara keeps reminding us of, and this neural hacking, right? These are humans that are making these decisions every day. That's like, yeah, I think I should put more sugar in this drink and then market it to children. And vaping, I just watched a podcast or saw Andrew Huberman talk about vaping. Vaping is as dangerous as cocaine because it's such a huge dopamine spike from the nicotine. You're getting it so quickly into your body. There's all of these things that are just basically hacking our body, hacking the software, the poor human software, so unupgraded. And all these scientists are just sitting around like they're thinking, they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. They know they're working every day to hack humans to make things that are addictive, right? It's just orange, just pure orange. They're just sitting there, and if they just took some time and said like, you know what, I'm doing something that's wrong, I'm going to quit this job, I'm going to go work for a job that's like doing clean technology or something, right? Like, why are we spending so much money on all this addictive technology? It's very dangerous. It's very bad. Anyways, I don't know, Bill, if I lost the thread there. I just got really excited about that topic. All right, Barbara, and then Paul, and then Steve, and I think that's probably it for today, because I'm gonna go teach yoga and try to save humanity. Barbara, you're next.
You know, we mentioned environmental, and Josh, of course, mentioned planned obsolescence, and you mentioned bloatware, right? Stuff
Barbara, we
that
can't hear you. We can't hear you, Barbara.
really,
Can you make yourself louder? Can you make the AI work better for you?
is this better? No.
I don't know. Keep talking.
Okay, that's interesting. Any better at all?
Might just have to
We
get,
could hear you fine earlier.
might just have
Yeah,
to
I
You're-
get,
know.
I can understand what you're saying. Your voice is very low, the volume level.
can you just get closer?
I'll
to-
talk as loud as I can then.
All right.
Can you, yes or no?
Yeah, can you get closer to the machine?
I know it's a headset, and my mouth is right on it.
Okay, well, we can.
So
yeah.
planned obsolescence, right? And bloatware. So we're getting garbage that nobody needs or wants. We're then throwing it away every year to 18 months, putting it in landfills. So the environmental side of tech, Bitcoin, incredibly power hungry. The big server farms using up big amounts of power. Teslas, California told people to not use them in some parts because they didn't have the electricity to charge them. So there's ramifications in the physical world of what tech is doing, not just in our brains, but actually in doing incredible damage to the physical world, particularly in the third world with the mining of the materials that are needed for tech, in incredible physical damage. So I think we shouldn't think of just the mental and societal issues.
Yes, I put on, when I was at GE, I worked on cost to serve, and it was all about data center optimization and thinking about how much electricity we're using. And I started worrying about the dirty cloud, which is a phrase I coined about we have all these images and documents that we store in a cloud that we forgot about, like some drop box that we forgot that we have. Like, I think that we're just using so much resources, rare earths, to build all these.
Not just forgotten, but I have 10 copies on my backups, right?
Right, right. Like, I always have these ideas about problems, and then I have no follow through. But yeah, the dirty cloud is the thing that's going to happen. We're all going to be realizing all the pollution the 20 copies of, some picture of someone that we don't even like anymore. All right. Thanks, Barbara, for bringing us back down. Paul?
Yeah, this is just this kind of came out of when Veronica was doing her really spiffy display of the computer generated art. This is going to be a suggestion. I'm going to make a suggestion that we might think about for a future session or two that we do. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the postmodern philosopher Jean Baudrillard. I think he's French. He came up with the term simulacra, which basically, he made the proposition that we are so surrounded by simulations of reality that we are now substituting the simulations of reality for the reality itself. A perfect example of that would be if you were to ask the average person what they know about Abraham Lincoln, they might have seen the movie Lincoln, and they'll tell you all about what they know about what they learned from the movie Lincoln, but that doesn't mean they know anything about Lincoln. They're substituting a simulation of the reality for the reality itself. And this gets all back to, how do you get around this? And this gets to the issue of sense making. How do we make sense of our sensory inputs? And I think that'd be an interesting subject that we could pick up as a group in the future.
You know what? I think that most people know more about Lincoln from like Lincoln vampire hunter movies than than some documentary about Lincoln.
You're probably right, Beth. God, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's
Anyways,
a perfect example, and there's a million that you could use of a simulation of whatever reality there is substituted for, the actual thing itself. And that's really distorting. And the point he was making is that it's just distorting everything. You can't make sense of anything any longer.
yeah. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about right brain versus left brain, like abstract thinking versus getting like things done. And that is a very interesting thing. Orange is very, very left brain and very much about breaking things apart and processes and optimizing. And right brain is very much about like the bigger picture, sense making. How does this all work together? And there's some new book that just came out, or maybe it's not even new, but it's really about how we're slaves to the left brain nowadays because the left brain is verbal. So anyways, there's too many interesting things going on right now. Okay, Steve, and then that's the end. That's the end of the session.
So
Go
yeah,
home
so
after that.
I want to make a comment on both Bill's point and on Paul's points just there. So maybe if I start with Bill's first of all, I like the pairing between Brave New World and 1984, and I'm sure you know that Aldous Huxley was George Orwell, Arthur Blair's teacher at school, right? They had a teacher-pupil relationship, and Huxley actually sent his book to George Orwell and saying, "I like your book, but I think mine's better." And I think it was on the basis that, well, I mean, I think it's a more realistic kind of prediction of where we've ended up in that sense. And I've often wondered or been looking for like I see them almost as like two parts of a trilogy. And they both have a kind of thing where the state plays a pretty big role. And I was interested for a kind of a sort of libertarian dystopia as the third part to complete the trilogy almost. If I were a writer, I would try and write it, but it's and it would probably be a kind of a VR type world, maybe with a tribe of completely off-grid sort of moon party type people, and maybe then this sort of overworked tech engineers as well. maybe we're almost there already. I don't know, but and then on Paul's point, oh, sorry, my brain. Oh yeah, it strikes me more and more people now, when you try to explain something to them, want to say it back to you in terms of movies, as if movies were the primary experience from which everything is now understood, which I find, it's just an interesting sort of comment on your point there, Paul, that seems to be what people are now taking as primary experience. And a real film geek to me as well said he now loves VHS because it has a tactility, so that the graininess of VHS he's experiencing as a substitute for the physical tactile world almost. Anyway, that's I thought that was an interesting point, Paul. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and the thing that was the one image that Veronica presented that really kind of clicked that with me was that interesting one of the high jumper that was converted into a zombie. And it's like, if, again, I'm not criticizing AI art, but if you can create that image with such a high degree of sophistication, you can very easily, and I think we're even seeing some of it now, you can reinforce the belief in zombies. It's like, well, yeah, they really do exist. And it's all because of this, as the postmodern philosopher said, it's a simulacra. It's this, we can create such sophisticated images of reality that, and then twist them, that they now become reality, even though they're not reality at all.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for participating in AI Friend or Foe. I feel like we figured it all out.
I'm going to go ahead and
All right.
shut off the recording.
Bye.